evening, everyone.
Talk to you later.
Well, thank you very much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate the strong showing of support that's come out tonight so we can get a good community dialogue initiated. My name is Tom Henderson. I am the City Council representative for Ward 4, which is this part of town. We also have a lot of other representatives from City Council here tonight who can hear firsthand what is said. We've got Paul Kumar. He's our City Council president. He's on the phone back there. We've got Marty Mace, one of our at-large representatives. We have Mr. Dave Tadich, representing Ward 1. And up front here, we also have our police chief, Mark Spatzel, and we also have Gary Ebert, our law director. So tonight's meeting is all about dogs. As I think everyone in the room knows, there was an event which occurred last weekend on Saturday night that was heartbreaking, for sure. I'm very upset, as I'm sure many of you are, about what happened. And the goal tonight is to initiate a dialogue between yourselves and the city to do everything that we can legally to reduce the probability of that happening again. The overall process begins tonight with this meeting. We'll have a chance to hear an update from our police chief, what happened, what is happening with regard to the situation that's brought us all here tonight. And then we can have a time to share ideas back and forth about what we should do as a community. That will give City Council and the Safety Subcommittee, most in particular, of City Council, good information, direct feedback from you, the people, about what we all collectively think should be done. That'll then get vetted through the City Council process. We'll look at whether these ideas that are performed or brought up are something that can be implemented from a legal perspective, whether there's something that can be enforced by the police, and of course, whether or not we think it makes sense for the community. So that's the overall process. I would expect it will take several months. As you all know, things work slowly through government, and local government's no different than that. But you're all part of that tonight, and I'm glad you're here. We will be taking questions later on, but first, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Mark Spatzel. He's going to give you a briefing on the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. Appreciate that. Mr. Henderson. By the way, Paul Vincent is also in the back, another council representative. I saw him come in. I want to thank everybody for coming. This is a great crowd. This is an important issue. It's an issue that not only affects the family, the Miranda Krause family, but all of us. But first, what I want to say is that there are multiple victims in this. Obviously, the Morans are a victim in this, the Krauses, their daughter and son-in-law, also their grandson, who was present when this happened. And we can't forget that an event like this has a ripple effect. And I assume that's why you're all here. We understand that. But first and most, we're here for the family, to support them, and also to determine what we can do to move forward. I won't reiterate what happened, other than this incident, this dog attack occurred August 20th on a Saturday at 8 p.m. While Mr. Moran was walking his dog Charlotte. The dog was attacked by two dogs from 409 pellet, and unfortunately Charlotte was killed and two people were bitten. That's the basic facts of why we're here today. So what is the city doing? Well, that evening the city had the dogs removed from the home. There was two of them, two pit bulls, a male and a female. Both dogs were removed from the home. They were taken to our kennel located on Nagel Road. We obviously took a report. We contacted the county animal warden, who the next day came and took custody of the two dogs and took them to the county kennel. So the dogs are currently impounded at the county kennel. There's no plans at this point for those dogs to be released from the county kennel, and I'll explain a little bit why I say that. Both owners have been cited for dog at large ×2. In other words, each one was cited for each dog being at large. And then the other owner was cited for one of the dogs not having an up-to-date rabies vaccination. As I say that, it sounds like we're minimizing the extent of what happened. And in a sense, the law is, because that's the maximum that we can do currently under the law as far as criminal violations. One of the reasons we're here today is to talk about what we can do forward and do moving forward to make this have a little bit more of an impact. We're also addressing the property maintenance issues at the residence. And I'm going to talk about some things that we've done in the past as it relates to that as well. One of the things that I've also done, actually did last week, was I deemed both dogs to be vicious dogs. And what that means is that it requires the owner, if they were to get the dogs back, to follow certain regulations that are built into the city ordinance that helps protect the public. Those regulations can be quite expensive, but they're there to protect everybody else from dogs that have been deemed vicious. I've also petitioned, or we will petition the court and notify the owners that we will be petitioning the court to have both dogs euthanized. The reason for that is the dogs are still pose a danger. There's a high likelihood that this could happen again, and we just can't allow that. So it's my opinion that the dogs should unfortunately have to be put down. The county has also deemed the dogs to be dangerous dogs. So while I deem them to be a vicious dog, the county in turn deemed them to be dangerous dogs. And what that means is if for some reason the dogs were not put down and they wanted to have these dogs put into a rescue or a foster home situation, the dangerous dog designation goes with the dogs. So anybody receiving those dogs has to comply with the state's dangerous ordinance, and they have to comply with all those regulations to keep the public safe. So that is what we're currently doing. Like I said, everybody's been cited. They'll have to appear in Rocky River Municipal Court to answer to those charges. I will tell you that all those charges are minor misdemeanors, which unfortunately means that the maximum penalty is up to a $150 fine. There is no other penalty attached to that. There's no probation. They can pay that fine, whatever the judge determines, and that would be the end of that. We've had a lot of questions about the residence in and of itself, 409 Pellet. I just want to address that quickly. We have a history at that residence in the city. It involves the Bay Village Police Department, involves the Bay Village Building Department, involves the Law Department, and all these entities have worked either addressing the issues or worked with the family. So we've had the police department involved, the building department involved, the property maintenance department involved, law department involved, the county animal warden involved, Animal Protective League, Department of Health, and Children and Family Services. So over the last 3+ years, all those agencies have been involved with incidences that have occurred at that residence. And I just tell you that so that you know that we've been dealing with this for a while. And to the extent that we can, we have dealt with those things to the extent that we can. So, you know, we have frustrations like you do. Sometimes when we enforce the law and there's a maximum penalty and we don't feel maybe it's enough. And I certainly understand that from this perspective. But I think why we're here is you know, where are we going to go from here? How are we going to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again? That it's not a child that is attacked, it's not another dog that's attacked and killed. Mr. Ebert may address this, I'll speak to it briefly. Everything we do has to be constitutionally protected. We can't do things outside the United States Constitution, Ohio Constitution. So we have to be careful on having an emotional reaction and want to do things that aren't constitutional. So we're bound by those parameters. But within those parameters, we're going to take the action that we can to make sure that we strengthen our local laws, that we deal with the issue to the extent that we can. One of the ways we've talked about doing that, and maybe we'll talk about these in a little bit, but I just want to touch on them briefly, is having graduated penalties for multiple incidents, increasing the penalties for current things, especially when a loose dog causes a dog bite. The reason for that is if you go beyond the minor misdemeanor phase, there's misdemeanors of the 1st degree down to misdemeanors of the 4th degree. 1st degree misdemeanor being the most heavily penalized, and that can result up to 180 days in jail, where a 4th degree misdemeanor is 30 days in jail. The important thing about a misdemeanor outside of a minor misdemeanor is it gets the court discretion and the ability to put the offender on probation. when the offender's on probation, then the court can attach to that stipulations of the probation, which may prevent this person from, this is just an example, of owning a dog, having any vicious dogs. You know, there's a lot of things the court has leeway in doing in that case. Now, understand that that's the court's jurisdiction. We have very little to say about what goes into that probation other than making a recommendation and supplying the facts to the court. So what can we do? We're going to certainly look at our city ordinances and try to strengthen those. It's your job as citizens to hold us accountable to make sure we're doing our job, and I welcome that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. We ask that you as residents be vigilant. You know, most of the dog owners in the city of Bay Village are very responsible dog owners. Most of the dogs in the city of Bay Village are very, they're not dangerous. They're loving dogs. We have those exceptions, and we got to be cognizant of the fact that we have exceptions and have laws for that, but not go too far. And that's what we're going to try to do. So we all have a stake in this. That's why we're here. That's why you're here. And what we want to do is work together positively to address the issues. I understand there's a lot of emotion. We want to understand that emotion, but we can't let it drive our policy and our procedures and our constitutional duty of what we need to have accomplished. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to... I can certainly take questions now. Sure. I can take questions over any of the stuff that I've talked about so far. Yes, sir.
What kind of things can a resident typically do for self-defense if being attacked or your dog is being attacked by a vicious dog? They go on their own property.
Sure. His question is, what can a resident legally do if they're being attacked by a dog? You can use whatever measures necessary to protect yourself. It's no different than an individual self-defense. If there's a dog attacking you or your dog, you can defend yourself. Up to the extent of killing that dog. Actually, it's written in the ordinance that law enforcement can do that based upon the facts of the situation. You're allowed to protect yourself, certainly. Yes,
are you including firearms for that?
If need be, if you have a carry concealed,
yeah. Legally discharge a firearm?
If you're legally allowed to carry a firearm, and you're walking your dog, and that happens, and
I'm
you have to
legally
shoot.
allowed to have a firearm in my house. Am I allowed to use it in Bay Village?
In a self-defense situation, absolutely.
In a dog, vicious dog.
Yeah, absolutely. In a self-defense situation, you are. You would not be charged with, shooting a firearm. Now, if you were to shoot across the street at a dog, that's, a different story. But we're talking about then and there, while it's happening, you can defend yourself. Yes, sir.
Well, while you're addressing this issue, could you also include, I think it's related about the parks, people letting their dogs run without a leash in the parks. I find that to be a common incident, and too often, I always have my dog in the park, and it doesn't do any good for me to say anything to them. You completely ignore you. I mean, because you never know, even though their dog's friendly, it doesn't mean it's going to be friendly to your dog.
Right, so his question was about dogs being loose in the park, and the ordinance does provide that dogs have to be under the control and leashed on property. You can contact us with that. We have actually dealt with that many times at Columbia Road Park, with dogs being loose.
No, even Bradley Bay.
Yeah, I'm just saying as an example, of course.
I see
but
in the tennis courts,
yeah.
Training their dogs in the tennis
The thing is we have to know about these things. Sometimes we do find out about them, and sometimes we don't. The thing about misdemeanors is we have to observe the action occurring to actually cite for that. Otherwise, we become an advisory and basically telling the people, look, you gotta, am I missing something? We're busy? Okay, I hope they're not coming here. So we have to see things happen in order to cite them. So we end up being an advisory action, basically, at that point.
But do you patrol the parks to see that?
We patrol the parks as much as we can, absolutely. And our officers do take action when they see it, but many of these things are complaint driven because obviously we have 5+ square miles to cover with often 2-3 officers, so obviously we can't be everywhere all the time. That's not an excuse, that's just the reality. But, so that's why a lot of these things are complaint driven, and we'll follow up on them. Yes, sir.
Just to confirm, were there 2 dogs only in the house, or any evidence of any other dogs?
Right. As far as we know at this time, there was only 2 dogs. Now, there's information there may have been other dogs prior to this event that were moved out of the house either shortly before, shortly after this occurred. My understanding right now, there's no other dogs in the house. Yes, ma'am.
So you mentioned that if these homeowners have dogs in the future, that they could be subject to requirements of containment. What does that mean? I mean, currently, my observation, the property doesn't even have a fence.
Mhm.
So what does containment mean?
Well, under the way the ordinance is written now, if these dogs are deemed vicious and they come back to the house, which again, I anticipate highly that's not going to happen, they would have to provide that the dogs, either when they're in the house, they're secured in the house. If they're outside, there's certain fencing regulations and kennel registrations that have to be in place. If the dog is walked, they have to be muzzled. So there's certain things that have to happen. They have to have liability insurance up to $100,000. Mr. Hurt could go out and buy another dog tomorrow, and there's nothing we can do at this point. There's no law that prevents somebody from owning a dog, even those that have violated. And again, that's where that probation comes into effect. Unfortunately for us sitting here today, it's hard to understand, but this is more of a reactionary thing. You can't tell somebody they can't have their right because we are afraid you might do something. That's not the way our system works. So unfortunately, if he was to buy another dog, it would be on that dog case-by-case basis. Sir in the back.
From what I understand, he's been breeding pit bulls for 20-plus years. So you're saying he can go out and buy another set of pit bulls and breed them?
At this point, barring anything else that we're talking about, he could. The Ohio Department of Agriculture is the one that regulates breeding, but it's a high volume breeding law. In other words, it applies if you breed more than 60 dogs per year. Under that, there's no regulations. Ma'am?
Why weren't the dogs euthanized after they killed this other dog?
You mean immediately? The
Yeah.
law doesn't allow for that. We have to petition the court. The court has to grant our petition to have them euthanized. We can't just do that as a matter of course.
Any indication of what conditions or training conditions that may have been present in the house? There is some of the ordinance that speaks to dog fighting and
Right. No,
training, and no indication that wasn't going on.
we have no indication of that. Ma'am? Yes.
My dog was severely attacked, as was I a year ago, April, on Pellet Drive. The city promised a lot of things that they would do. Many letters were written to the mayor, to our councilman, to everyone we could think of in Bay Village, and we were promised that this would be looked into. This is over a year ago. If things had been done at that time that were promised, I am of the belief that this dog did not have to die. Now, to my knowledge, nothing was done that was promised to me and my family by the city. We can't do that for you. Well, what can you do for us? What can you do for situations like this? My dog lost his tail. Thousands of dollars I paid. 3 different vets, the last one a specialized hospital down in Akron. He lost his tail because they had to take the skin from his tail and graft it onto his rear end for all of the damage that was done. Similar to little Charlotte. Charlotte was a smaller dog, but it was similar with the same thing. The rear end was pulled down. And you're telling us that he has his rights. He has his rights to injure the people on the street, to make the people afraid, to let their kids be out there, to themselves walk down the street.
I'll try to answer that in one answer. First, he has rights just like all of us have rights, absolutely. To the extent that the criminal law allows us, we enforce those violations.
So what can we do?
And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is where do we go from here. I'm not familiar with your individual promises that were made to you. I don't know, and certainly we can talk after this meeting about that. I'm not familiar with that, but we can address those privately. Because I'm not familiar with that, so I really can't answer that part of it. But we can talk after, certainly, about that. Ma'am?
You said earlier that the court, with the probation, decides the extent of what the rules can be, that you can't make them, but they can certainly, once they deem it.
Yes, they can deem that in a misdemeanor case,
okay.
Not a minor misdemeanor case like we're dealing with now, but a misdemeanor cases, they can determine a probation. If they determine probation is adequate or necessary, then they can dictate the terms of those probations, and then they can be fairly creative with what they can do to protect the public.
Can we do something to let them know how you feel about that?
In the future, absolutely. In fact, anytime we have situations where there's a victim and probation is going to be issued. Often there's a victim impact statement that can be made. Public can have input. It's up to the judge to determine, well, the judge and the probation officer to determine how much that's going to weigh into their decision making.
But won't this be similar? Won't this be happening with this family?
No, because these current charges are minor misdemeanors. There's no probation possible on these. These are fine-only offenses at this point. Yeah.
Do other cities have the same sort of ordinances that we do, or are they talking?
Many cities are similar to ours. What we have done for the most part is mirrored the state law and added additional restrictions that are not in the state law. And I know there's other cities that have different things, whether they're graduated penalties or more severe penalties, and that's what we're going to look at in this instance. And so we want to take a good look at what other cities are doing. They're working. I had a conversation with the animal warden today for Cuyahoga County and asked her, I said, are there best practices out there? Are there cities that you would recommend we look at as model citizen or model policies for our citizens? And she basically said that the ones that are out there that are the most effective have the graduated penalties attached to them. And
I have to admit, I came here to tear them apart today, but I will back you up on the fact that once it goes to court, the judges can look at that, and as a former animal control officer many, many years ago in Westlake, we did take these to court, and we did get 5 years without animals, and the dogs were euthanized. That being said, yes, there are better ordinances out there. Obviously you intend on doing that. My question is, Bay Village has always had where the police chief deemed the dog dangerous and vicious well. Westlake and many other cities would write that in an ordinance and take it to court. How do you get away with deeming that without back training, basically?
well, I didn't write the ordinance.
Right.
I just have to go by what the ordinance says.
Right.
So what we do, and you're familiar with this if you're a former animal control, we do our investigation. We talk to the people, for example, I talked with the animal warden who indicated the dog is continuing to be vicious.
Right.
It's actually getting more aggressive. So I take all the facts that we know, I take the information that I've learned, I take the history, and I make a determination.
Okay.
They still have appeal rights. So even
Right.
though I deem it dangerous, vicious, and I want to euthanize the dog, they have the ability to appeal that decision at the court. If they choose to do nothing, it goes into effect. But obviously, they always have that right to appeal and to contest my determination.
So, and I'm sorry, I just wanted to finish. You're using county, but they have a whole county to keep track of.
Correct.
Do you not think that a big part of the problem is that you haven't had an animal control officer here? And it's happening in North Olmsted. I'm a North Olmsted resident, and I'm not happy about it because the officers, under their contracts, have certain things that they have to do. Animal control officers are trained in the field.
Mm.
I think that's a big problem.
Well, certainly animal control officers are more able to handle certain situations. They're more educated than us generally. We learned from Diana when she was our animal control officer, but there are certain things we can and cannot do, certainly. I wouldn't sit up here and say that having an animal control officer would have prevented this, but having an animal control officer is a benefit.
I think they would have kept up on it. Is
Right.
I think it's a big issue that you need to look at because I think it is a big solve, to your problem. Had she known, she would have had better track of this, just like you guys have people in Chris. I mean, it's.
We have been in contact with this family over time. So it's not like we lost track of them, forgot about them, anything like that. And if you ever review our public records related to the 2015 incident, you'll see time after time, I was directing my officers to follow up, to follow up, to follow up, to follow up. So
Okay,
it's not like we didn't do anything, but yes, an animal control officer didn't do that we did that.
Okay, I misunderstood because I thought you said you didn't know anything about her case.
Oh, no, absolutely. I don't know anything about the promises that
okay.
was made, but I absolutely know about the case because I dealt with it directly.
Okay, and just one last thing with the defending yourself. Mace is not going to work on a dog. It's just going to anger it more because of having the nose. So don't count on that is all I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So thank
Sir,
you.
in the back.
Chief, with all due respect, I appreciate the police response and everything. I live 5 doors down from the residents in question. There are neighbors on every side of that residence who have experienced things in one fashion or another, who have seen activities and various things that are clearly questionable. You can get in more trouble in this city for having a headlight out than you can if your two dogs kill another dog and then another one of their dogs savages another one the year before to the point where the person who owned that dog paid $20,000 in expenses to save her dog. This is unacceptable. I don't get it. I understand the protocol of law. My dad's a retired police officer who unfortunately passed on. My nephew is a Detroit police officer going into his second year. I know law clearer than anyone does. I don't understand how you allow a residence that puts an entire neighborhood in a state of anxiety and apprehension about even going past there for fear that something's going to happen to them. What do you got to do to be on the radar?
Well, and that is a terrible situation. And we're very... We've had other instances in the city, certainly, where that type of anxiety exists in a neighborhood because of a neighbor or a group of neighbors or a house, whatever it might be. We still, you understand the law. We have to operate in the law. I can't just go make an arrest not based upon probable cause. I can't go cite somebody just because I don't like them or the neighbor doesn't like them. I have to go by criminal law. We have acted within criminal law in all these instances. Basically what I'm telling you is, if you want to put it this way, we're handcuffed by our current regulations as far as what we can do. And you're correct. A minor misdemeanor is analogous to a traffic ticket. I mean, if you really want to put it that way, in fact, some traffic violations are more serious than a minor misdemeanor we're talking about here. So I don't disagree with you on that point. But I think we got to be careful in saying that we're not doing anything. We're doing everything we can to the extent that we can. I can't go beyond that. I can't violate the law to enforce the law. So, Gail.
Thank you. You know, I just wanted to commend you again publicly in front of all these people on what a wonderful job you are doing. I feel horrible if anybody has any animosity toward directing their questions to you or answers to you. My question are for these two over here, because I feel as though you're getting whatever from these individuals. I spoke to Mr. Henderson last year. He probably doesn't remember my call when this happened to our neighbor Jan's dog, and it was brushed off. I called Mr. Ebert's office 3 times because I was told the law director can take care of that. He told me he would take care of the issue also. I would like to understand from them, or have them answer to us, why those things weren't addressed at that particular time. Is this the responses? Is this what it has to take in order for them to act? I don't understand. I'm asking them.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me finish taking questions and then we'll have them address yours, okay?
Does Bay have any plans to hire an animal warden control?
That would be a council decision because it's a financial decision and that's a topic that we used to have one, yes, we did. Sir, in the back.
A couple of years ago, I was walking down Walmart, and my dog got attacked by a pit bull. And luckily, I was able, along with the owner, to keep the dog off my dog. We called the police. But what I'd like to know is, I didn't know anything about pelleting. I go walk my dog, and it sounds like I'm walking, it's a dangerous situation. Is there a way that residents can know where, like I filed a report, you know, like that a report's been filed about a dog attack on this street or at this street at this address, so when people go out and walk their dog, that they're not taking their lives on it?
I can answer that in 2 ways. The first way is if a dog has been deemed dangerous or vicious by us, they're required to post a sign in that yard indicating there's a dangerous or vicious dog present on that property. Beyond that, no, other than scouring public records. And I'll use the analogy of a sex offender. It took us scores of years to have a sex offender registry, and still that creates issues. So we're talking about going to the level of a registry for dogs that could be dangerous. I just don't see that happening. There's logistical issues with that, there's legal issues with that, and I understand why you'd want to have that, but that's a very difficult thing to institute and have come to be. And again, I would just use that analogy of the sex offender registry and the issues that go around that one. And that's far, very serious issue, obviously.
And the officer I talked to, because my dog wasn't injured, but if it wasn't for me and the owner, my dog probably would have been killed. He said that because there was no injury, there was nothing they couldn't do anything at all. They couldn't, because no one was injured.
Well, they could still.
He talked to the owners, and the owners were apologetic, and the owners, in my mind, I thought, acted very responsibly.
Right.
It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and again, we have to stay within the bounds of the law. If the dog is not under the custody and control of that person, there could be a dog at large type situation, but that would probably, unfortunately, again, be the extent of that. Ma'am, go ahead.
Yes, the dog that was attacked last year was deemed vicious by your office.
Yes.
Have you confirmed that it was not in the house at the time?
The dog was taken to an Akron rescue. We confirmed back at that time the dog was accepted by that Akron rescue, and we have no indication that dog was in that house at all. We have indication there was 2 adult dogs in the house, 2 adult pit bull dogs in that house, and there may have been puppies. As far as we understand now, there isn't, and this might be a good time to address another issue, is we can't just go into a house to look to see what is in that house without probable cause in the search warrant, and there's no possibility of getting a search warrant in this case absent very specific information that they're violating some section of criminal law.
So at what point were they required to post that a vicious dog lived there?
If the dog was returned to the property, they would have had to do that. The dog was never returned to the property after that 2015 incident.
That you know of?
That I know of, yes. And I feel very confident of that because we monitored that.
That the dog was not returned?
Correct, correct. And that was a female dog at that instance. Ma'am in the back.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. You had mentioned that the label dangerous can follow the dogs.
When the county deems it dangerous, it
Right.
follows that dog throughout the state.
What I'm concerned about is that the label needs to follow the owner, because they, as you mentioned, they can just go out, these dogs have been neglected, there's animal cruelty involved there, and then he can do this again. What stops him from moving out of our community, and then a boy, we hear on the news that another child or animal has been killed. What can we do? Turn the conversation around from limitations to what options we have as far as connecting with the county. How does that process work?
What you're addressing is laws that have to be changed. These designations go to a dog, not an individual. So the law would have to be changed to reflect to the owners. That's a very difficult legal process, and it'd be a big hurdle, but that's what you would have to have accomplished to do that.
Even for animal cruelty, like what constitutes
Well,
that?
going to animal cruelty, we did have the Animal Protective League check the house. They investigated, they did a report, and they closed it. They didn't find any instances of neglect or abuse at the house. But we called them on that, and that's the report we got back. Jen?
I just want to say, my comments before were not directed to you or the police department. The police were wonderful to me. They helped me get my dog in the car. They, helped me get him places when I had to take him and I couldn't get him there by myself. So they're not directed at you. I guess they're directed at your higher ups. And I guess I will have to wait until it's their turn.
Okay, question in the back?
I just had a question. If it did happen again with the same dog owners, is it still a minor misdemeanor? One is still minor?
No, let's assume for a second, based upon, she asked if it happened again, what would be the penalties? If it happens again, the dogs would be there because they're designated vicious dogs.
If it's a different dog in the same house?
If it's a different dog, unfortunately, the penalties, if we don't change the ordinances, would remain the same. Because again, it goes to the dog, not the owner. Sir?
So you have to have probable cause to check the house?
Correct.
Those dogs busting out of the front door and going onto somebody else's property, is still a probable cause?
That's not probable cause to go in the house, because what would I be searching for? You have to be very clear in an affidavit. An affidavit for a search warrant has to be based upon timeliness, probable cause, facts, what the criminal violation is, and what you're looking for that supports that criminal violation you're looking for. It's a very difficult thing to get in many cases. It would be impossible in this case based upon what we know and what we have currently. Ma'am?
Well, you say you can't go in the house, but what about when they're sitting right outside? For 2 weeks of summer, they literally had a makeshift pen in their front yard that I called on.
I'm sorry, what was, I didn't hear what you said.
They have the dogs sitting right outside. I mean, for 2 weeks of summer in their front yard, they had a makeshift pen with nothing, I mean, it was literally 4 boards leaning together, that they had the puppies in for 2 weeks, and I called the city on this. I mean, so that's not going into anything. I mean, isn't that caught I mean, to follow
Well,
over there.
again, that in and of itself, having dogs in a pen in the front yard is not a violation of anything. I don't know if you called the police or
I called the city.
building, okay.
I called the city and was directed to, I mean, on top of all the junk in their front yard, that was.
Right, and we're dealing with property issues relative to that, but as far as I'm not familiar with that, but just kind of hearing what you're saying, I'm not seeing a criminal violation. We could have certainly showed up and we would have had to look for something.
Well, you're saying you weren't able to go in and look, I'm saying if they have it, they're literally housing it right out there with all of it. I mean, when you say you're following up, what following up is going on? What following up are you doing for us? You mentioned earlier you followed up with that house many times last year after the one, dog was attacked. So what follow-up was done?
In 15?
Yeah, last year, I mean, in the past year.
As I indicated, we've had the police department, building department, property maintenance, law, county animal warden, APL, Department of Health and Children and Family Services follow up. It was from continual complaints. So that's our follow up. What you're saying is information you're providing us now that maybe there were dogs being bred in the house, and now what can we do with that information moving forward? Again, information for search warrants has to be timely. I can't use information that was before unless it's contemporaneous with when we're searching and doing a search warrant. I know it's complicated. Legal search and seizure is complicated, but the bottom line is you got to have probable cause. I got to have a law that I'm looking at to investigate that's being violated, and I have to stay within the bounds of the criminal law as far as search and seizure. Ma'am.
It's been going on since, you know what, I'm sure it's longer than my incident. My incident is similar to hers. My cat was tied in the garage. Now, who ties their cat? I tied my cat. Follow the city. Anyway, so I got attacked by the loose dog, and so did my cat. She had her tail ripped off, whatever. I was bitten. I had to go for rabies shot afterwards. But you know what? And yes, if there was a follow-up, meaning that I found someone in the neighborhood who babysat for that exact description of that dog, and that police officer, I have the highest respect for you, sir. I really do in your department. However, it was supposed to be followed up. Yes, came back and said, oh, well, it wasn't that house. They don't have that dog. Okay, but we will follow up on this. That was back in 2008, sir, September 28, 2008. This is 8 years later, and the same thing is happening over and over and over and over. And you condemn me for feeding the animal and send me a citation and a warrant for my arrest, and you let this happen? That's what bothers me.
And I certainly understand that frustration, but again, we are bound by the law. I can't step outside the law. As much as I might understand what you're saying and want to do something, there's only so much I can do.
But that's what I think we're all here for, or maybe the majority of us.
Yeah, and I think that's where, and I'll take a couple, I'm sorry to interrupt, I'll take a couple more questions, but we need to move on to that portion because we are here for something other than, it's great to hear people's concerns and their issues and problems, but I think we're all here to kind of find out where we're going to go from here, how we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. So let me take 2 more questions and then we'll move on.
You mentioned that the ordinances needed to be changed. Are you talking about the ordinances within the Bay Village law?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the city ordinances, the City of Bay Village would have to be changed too.
And that includes the leash law and all of the things that were in that?
Yeah, we would look at the entire Chapter 505. Well, City Council would obviously look at Chapter 505. Ma'am?
Who made the decision that this wealthy community could not afford a dog warden?
Not me.
Ask those who make a decision like that.
Hence the higher ups.
One more question, Becky.
Is there, I know in some, my understanding was in some states and cities, owners can be charged with assault when their dog attacks another human being. So is there not that as a possibility within our laws?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because we looked at many other criminal violations that we could possibly entertain in this case. None of them fit because every criminal law has a culpable mental state attached to it, knowingly, recklessly, purposely, negligently. And when you're looking at these particular laws, they don't fit this circumstance, unfortunately. So you have to create a law that deals with this outside of what we currently have. Okay, last question, then we're going to move on.
So you're saying that you don't think that they knew that they were vicious animals, which would make that a criminal offense then?
I have to be able to prove that. There's a lot that we think, and there's a lot that we feel. This
So
is
that's at
this is
your
the
discretion. So it could be a criminal case if you thought he knew that they were vicious.
if they said attack, okay, we have to be able to prove that culpable mental state, and that's difficult in even more obvious situations. And you know, we as police officers, believe me, get very frustrated by prosecutors. There's none here when they have to make those difficult decisions on not charging something because we know what happened. We know what would happen there. And they'll come back and tell us, well, that's all fine and dandy, but you have to be able to prove the intent. We can't prove the intent, we're not going to charge. So I'm going to turn this back over to Mr. Henderson, and you can ask some further questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chief. I really appreciate the great briefing for everyone. So, like I said earlier tonight, my name is Tom Henderson. I am the board representative of this area. With me tonight also, we've got other people from City Council. So many of us are here tonight listening to you firsthand, so we can all take your feedback back to Council, begin to work on changes to some of our local ordinances based on this feedback. Now, to the questions earlier about 2015 and our reaction to it, my take is that the police department did a great job of enforcing the laws that were in place, and the dog that was involved from this address in 2015 was ultimately removed from the house. And so that portion of the law was effective. However, as we all know, that portion of the law was not effective at preventing a similar situation from occurring again this year. And so our primary goal tonight is to focus on ideas about how to prevent a similar situation from occurring again in the future. That's why we're here tonight to talk about ideas. So what we've been doing since this event this year is we've been taking a look at some of the ordinances in other nearby cities. The law director has been doing some research on that front, and even some citizens have stepped up. There's a local lawyer who has been conducting some research, and some local women have graciously written a letter with some very specific recommendations. We're going to take all of those into account. At a very high level, I'm going to talk through a few of those ideas, and then what I'd like to do is open the floor for comments on those ideas, as well as input from any of you as to other ideas that City Council ought to consider. However, as you've heard before, City Council at the local level is somewhat limited in its ability to change laws because they're circumscribed by state and federal control. So whatever we come up with will have to fit within those guidelines, and that will be the delicate balance that we'll seek to find. So with that said, a few of the ideas that have begun to circulate stem from both those women's letter and also from Avon Lake Ordinance. They contain a designation called nuisance dog that we do not have. We at Bay Village have dangerous dogs and vicious dogs. Avon Lake identifies a class below that, a lower level of concern called a nuisance dog. They even have levels below that called potential nuisance dog. And the activities that are required to become either a potential nuisance dog or a nuisance dog involve lower level activities such as chasing a person who was not acting in a menacing fashion towards the dog, biting another dog but not harming it in a vicious and permanent way, displaying aggressive behavior while on the owner's property. So these are some ideas that other cities have put in place that we can start to take a look at. Now there will be challenges in implementing them, I'm sure, and that's what Mr. Ebert's going to speak about in a few minutes, but these are some ideas. Another idea that we've seen that I think might be worth pairing with the idea of a nuisance dog is a declassification process. So suppose for a moment that you own a dog. You're a good dog owner, your dog is a good dog, but for whatever reason it had a bad day. And it has become deemed a nuisance dog, if that is something that we create in our law. Well, you'll need to have a process, a right, to make sure that you can go get that dog taken off of that list. Other cities give a 2 to 4 year probationary period, and also sometimes require that the dog and the trainer undergo training to make sure that the dog is not going to become dangerous. Another feature of some of these laws that I personally like is that when the dog becomes a potential nuisance dog, you might have to get rabies shots for it and then inform the police department that the dog has received those. These kinds of activities, in my opinion, getting the rabies shot and telling the police department about that, being required to do so, and then having the dog attend some sort of training class and the owner attending that training class so they can know how to work together, may be beneficial to our city because that could reduce some of the harm in the event that something happens, and it may even reduce the likelihood of harm. Another realm, and this is where it would be most difficult to implement law, but another realm that I've definitely heard some feedback from the people on that we will be exploring, is law that follows the person who owns the dog rather than the dog. All of our laws today focus on the dog and what the dog has done. But some of the preliminary ideas that have been written to me in letters, which we will explore, and I cannot guarantee we will be able to implement, but we will explore, involve an idea that if a person has owned a dog in the past that was deemed dangerous, and then that happens again, a second time, perhaps there should be ramifications for that person. That's the extent of the idea at this point. We could go a lot of different directions what those ramifications might be, but like I said, we'll have to make sure that they are legal. One other idea that I have heard discussed, but I think it's important to bring back down, is the idea of what people call breed-specific legislation. So I have read some people say that we should not allow pit bulls in Bay Village. Bay Village used to have a law to that effect. However, it's been repealed. And perhaps Law Director Eber can speak to that a bit more in detail. He has the history for being involved when that was repealed. But that kind of legislation is very difficult to put in place and keep in place. And that's what Mr. Eber can talk about. So that's most likely not a direction that I think we're going to explore in great detail. But those are the basic ideas that we have at this point. And so from a process perspective, I want to be clear that what will happen from here is we will take these ideas, the ideas that you're about to share in a minute, if you have any, and we're going to put them together, and we're going to punt this to the Safety Committee first. The Safety Committee will first vet those details. I'll be involved, along with Mr. Paul Vincent, on that process. We will take a look at what we can do from an actual drafting standpoint, make sure these things are legal, and then it would be great, honestly great, if anyone who's here tonight attends those meetings. That would be the proper forum to attend as we vet those laws, as we come up with those ideas. That way you can sit in the audience at those public meetings, share your feedback right in that process where those laws are being crafted and considered. Once the Safety Committee gets through that process, which may take some time, they'll make a recommendation up to the Committee of the Whole, which is all 7 members of City Council. That's the body that ultimately has to vote to change the ordinances in Bay Village. That's the body that can change the laws. So that's how the process works. With that, I'd like to pause on that idea and then open the floor for comments or questions about ways to move forward. Sir.
The chief mentioned earlier about escalating the penalties as an idea. He had told other cities as to what worked in those cities. Is that on your list?
Right. That would be an amendment to our existing laws, the way that the escalations work. That is definitely something we can consider, along with brand new ideas from other cities. Absolutely. Ma'am?
No disrespect to you, but I think what people in this room want to hear is, what is this time frame? What you just described leaves wide open the possibility that one of our neighbors, one of our kids, or one of our dogs can be killed by the next set of dogs that's brought into that home. So what do we need to do to speed this process up so that we have something tangible that we can look at, evaluate, vote on?
It's difficult to provide a precise answer to that, and I apologize for that, but that's just the reality, and I don't want to overpromise it. As you can imagine, any issue dealing with animals can become quite intractable. There are various constituents who have differences of opinion on all the matters. They come to the meetings, they express those opinions, and that pushes the time frame out. Whether it's something with regard to bicycle laws, or even a public sewer project. Sometimes those things take a considerable amount of time. So I can't give you an exact answer, but what I can tell you is that the showing here tonight, all of these people have come out tonight. There's a lot of people on city council here tonight. We see you, we hear you, and I'm just a person in town like you are. I feel the same way you do. I want to make this happen. I want to get some stronger laws on our books because I feel terrible about what has happened. And I want to see that happen. But it's a representative democracy, and these 7 people are going to be the people who vote on this when we get to it. But I can't guarantee a timeline. Sir? In the red?
Yeah, since the dog attack about a year and a half ago, what have you done or what has city council done to strengthen these laws? And if you haven't done anything at all up until about a week and a half ago, earlier it said that we're supposed to hold you guys accountable. So what's the most efficient way to hold your feet to the fire?
That's a great question. So what did happen in 2015 from my perspective is that the laws we had in place effectively took care of the dog, which was the problem, right?
You said that, right?
Exactly. So now we have a new problem, a problem that did not exist in the same way that it existed in 2015. We have a problem where an owner has had 2 instances of a dangerous dog event. This is not something that our legislation had ever previously considered, and it wasn't pertaining precisely to the incident in 2015. When the dog was taken away in 2015, the dog was taken away. This is a new problem. That's why we need to bring in some new ideas and new legislation.
My understanding is with this specific household, the police have had decades of enjoyment from them. Did it not occur to you that they might get new dogs to do this again? And secondly, again, what is the most efficient way to hold your feet to the fire?
Well, you can email me and you can call me, but the most important thing, in all honesty, is to attend the subcommittee meetings. The safety committee meetings that are going to be drafting this legislation, and then the council committee of the whole meetings where they'll be debated and voted upon. That's the most effective way that you can participate in the process. Ma'am? Ma'am?
Me?
Dan?
Last year when this happened, a group of people from Pellet Drive went to a council meeting. And this was after all the letters and everything were written. And a lot of letters to the mayor. And when people attempted to bring this up at council, the reaction was, I know what's going on at Pellet Drive. We will move on. No, okay, we'll look into this. Your reaction to people who wrote you letters is, I'm going to look into this right now, which is over a year ago, and compare these things to other cities. Avon Lake had situations where dogs were killed. I think with less than a month, they had new legislation passed. Less than a month. Now, what makes them different than Bay Village? That they can get things passed that quickly. Is it because some people don't like dogs? That they don't care about putting their 2 cents worth into animals? You know, because that's not going to help them advance anywhere? Or are you doing this because you want to help the people of your city that elected you people to office?
Right. The reason I'm here is precisely what you said, to help you. That's what I'm trying to do. And I agree, and I can completely understand your frustration on that matter. I really can. But like I said, the 2015 process, the police worked the case, the police took action on the case.
The police were wonderful.
Right.
It's the people who
Right.
could have helped the police do something that did not.
And that's what we're looking at now,
Now,
tonight.
we lost a beloved pet.
I feel terrible about
What are you gonna do, wait until you lose a child?
No.
I mean, yeah, that's the point, sir.
I
So, yes,
hear you.
I'm a pet lover, but you're gonna wait for a child to be attacked?
Obviously, that's not our intent. No. Clearly, I don't want that to happen. I feel terrible that the Moran's dog was killed. I feel terrible about that. And that's why I want to move forward with this these ideas. I want to move forward with the subcommittee work, and that's what we're going to be doing.
You should feel terrible that nothing's done for killing them.
I do. I understand how you feel. I really do. Sir?
Is there a subcommittee meeting, the safety subcommittee? What is the schedule of their meetings? Is there a set schedule for their meeting?
City Council reconvenes in about a week or so, and that's the time frame in which all the subcommittee work will re-begin. So those things tend to happen usually on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday evening, usually around 6:30, but it varies depending on when people are available. But they get announced publicly. You can look at the City Council section of the city's website and keep an eye out for the agendas. That's where you can watch for that information to come out. The City Council's section of the city's website, the agendas, okay? Yes, ma'am.
And I want to address my comments to you and to the law director and echo what other people have said, that we think that the police have done an excellent job with the ordinances they've been given.
Right.
And I think all of us have felt that we've been well served by them. So it really is about the folks that are deciding what the ordinances are. And when I was a first-year law student and working for a crotchety old attorney as a clerk, and went to him, he gave me a case to look at to say, how do we help this young couple that had come to us? And researching the law, I was certain there was absolutely nothing we could do under the law to help them. And I went back to him and said, with a memo that said, here's the law, there's nothing we can do. And he looked very sternly at me and said, Ms. Schofstall, your job is not to tell us how we can't help people. Your job is to find a way to help. And so that has echoed in my head this week, and as I've heard, and I think you're absolutely correct, that under the existing law, you did what you could do. And I do know that I know about constitutional law, I know you have to jump through all the hoops, but I hope that you put as much energy into finding a way to be helpful as you seem to put into explaining to us why you can't do anything. We have a bunch of us on Pellet Drive have given a letter to the City Council, and we've passed out copies of it to folks here. And when you're saying, what do we do to hold your feet to the fire, on the bottom of the copies that we've passed out, we're saying that in November, we'll get together at St. Barnabas Church, and we'll see what's been done. And I realize the ordinance may not be enacted by then, but if we're sitting here with nothing having moved by then we'll talk about what we can do to get serious about holding your feet to the fire. And we want to be helpful.
Right.
We want to do what we can to move it forward. We want to do what we can to have input into that process, which I'm sure everybody in this room is willing to try to help do.
Yeah.
But I also want to say to everybody in the room, let's get together again in November and see where we are.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a nice idea. You know, on that vein of what we can do, that really is, in my opinion, the main focus of tonight. So does anyone have ideas, specific ideas, beyond the ones that you might have already heard tonight about what we can do? And there's a couple of people I've asked to take very good notes tonight so that we can capture those ideas. Ma'am?
I don't know how this works, but shouldn't the person who owns the dog be responsible for the damages? In this case, to take the dog, pay for the bills?
That's a question, Mr. Hebert, from a law perspective. Perhaps you can help and address the question. The question is, when a dog attacks, who's responsible for the expenses that are incurred as a result?
From the criminal aspect of it in court, he would pay a fine in court costs. For the personal damage that the Morans have suffered, there would have to be a civil action filed, which can be done. We've even talked about that before at last week's meeting. So it'll be a civil action that would have to be filed for the loss of the dog or any damage, and medical bills, etc. And another issue that Tom didn't mention and the chief did mention, one of the ideas that was even brought about last week was an issue about charging criminal damaging. I know that seems kind of far-fetched maybe, but in the eyes of the law, criminal damage is damaging property. And although it was a dog, it's classified as property as far as that. And that's an issue that may be another avenue under our laws that we have currently that can be addressed. And while I'm up here, I'm going to mention just two little things. Tom mentioned about we used to have a pit bull legislation that prohibited pit bulls in Bay Village. That ordinance was struck down by the Supreme Court of Ohio because we were breed specific, and you couldn't be breed specific because that ordinance was on the agenda, on our ordinance for quite some time. Some cities still have that. No one's challenged it. So we've got to be careful as far as something along those lines. The one thing I also heard last week's meeting and a comment tonight was that they may be breeding pit bulls at this residence. If that's the case and people know about it, they should inform us because that is a violation operating a business. I'm trying to go on the off side here, but operating a business out of a home is a violation. It's another charge that can be brought if in fact they're breeding pit bulls in this house. So that's something, though, you have to have evidence of it, like people, a lot of cars coming to the front door, taking a dog out of the house, especially in today. Well, I'm saying, in today's world with these cell phones, it's pretty easy to take some pictures and actually have evidence. Where back years ago, we didn't have that. But that's another issue that, needs to be brought. And one other issue I heard brought up, I mentioned to the council president and the police chief last week, maybe we need to look at at least a part-time ACO officer. That may help, would not have saved this situation, but maybe addressing some of the complaints that come up all the time in the city for dog situations that occur.
Well, you don't know that, because if you would have had an ACO and someone was able to contact them, they might have known a little bit more how to take care of it than police officers who are trained in their ability to do their thing.
Sir, in the orange.
Tom, there's nowhere on the website that lists the safety commission or the subcommittees. So the Bay Village website doesn't have any information regarding those meetings. Also, those are to get to the meeting and the agendas, you got to go through the tree commission. Our website in the city of Bay is very difficult to navigate to find out when and where meetings are until the agenda, the meetings, the minutes have been posted. The notices of meetings per Joan, are buried in the tree commission, and then you got to go through that left side of the website. So what are we going to do to notify the residents of Bay Village of these safety commission, which is not listed, nor are the members listed on the website yet, and then the subcommittees that you speak about, what would be the specific subcommittees?
Well, let me ask Mr. Vincent, what's the specific name of the subcommittee and who are the members?
Environment and Safety, I'm Paul.
Environment and Safety is the official name of the committee.
And Dwight Clark's on it.
We have Dwight Clark, Paul Vincent,
And over there, you'll see Mr.
and Mr. Tavish.
None of those are listed on the website at this moment, so.
They are listed on the website. Perhaps after the meeting I can help you find it. But those names are listed on the website. And if you do go to the city government section, within the city council section, you'll see a list of agendas, and it does include all the agendas for all the subcommittee meetings.
Can you not?
Yeah. Yes, over here.
You said it's against the law for them to be running a business. So if you took a male and a female out of that home that attacked that dog, and there's puppies in there, isn't that reason to look and see?
Yeah, we did not see puppies in
There
the
were
house
puppies
at that
running
time.
around the neighborhood.
Okay,
And they
again,
were returned by
right,
the
that's
son.
information that
I
we were.
personally called.
Yeah,
I mean, you're saying you didn't know about it. I personally called and said it. So you guys have known about it. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, that's information we gathered after the fact. I would leave it to the legal people to tell me if I can go back now and cite running a business, but we have to have sufficient evidence of that.
But the APL can go in there and inspect if they're breeders, but you cannot.
They went in
So
there,
can go and look at the
they
home?
went in there under the consent of the owners. They don't have any more power to go into
Were
our
they
house
able to
as
go
we
in the
do.
basement?
They went into the home, they provided us a report that indicated the situations didn't rise to the level of neglect and abuse. And that's,
There was no reference that there was puppies.
no, I don't know that for a fact. I don't know that for a fact. And just because somebody's having puppies doesn't mean it's a breeder. You got this vet show, and we've looked into
Well, I
this.
thought that was the reason that he was able to keep those dogs when the ones before, because he had a breeding license.
No, he does not have a breeding license. A breeding license is for somebody who does more than 60 dogs per year. So just because you're having puppies doesn't mean you're a breeder. Now, we have looked at, just information for the entire group here, we've looked at the websites that were provided to us that show that they were, you know, selling dogs on the internet, whether it be FreeCycle or eBay or Craigslist. There's no current information on those sites relative to that. I had my detectives look at that. To get a history of that, we'd have to subpoena we have to get a subpoena from the court to subpoena those agencies, you know, Craigslist and all that, to try to find a history. But that goes back. And even if I was able to find that, doesn't mean we're going to be able to cite them for something that occurred months ago. But moving forward, what Ms. Reber was explaining is if you have evidence moving forward that they are operating or breeding out of that home, we would certainly want to know about that, and any evidence provided, we would take a look at.
Ma'am?
I think after my own dog was attacked on Walmart, and for years I walked by this home 2-3 times a day with my dog and never knew that dog was there, I know that the ordinances need to be changed. In the meantime, what I want to know is where these dogs are, so that myself and my 2 children and my husband are not attacked if we can prevent it ourselves. Is a minor misdemeanor searchable? Is it a county conviction? Can I search it in court dockets on the Cuyahoga County Court?
It would be under the Rocky River Municipal
Are
Court
those
docket.
searchable court dockets
Yes,
where I can
yes.
find Bay Village residents who've been convicted of
Yes.
a minor misdemeanor for this?
You-
What
you'd
is
have-
the exact offense?
You'd have to search by name, for each individual name, but what you would search for is dog at large, basically.
Right.
And
It's searchable though.
it's searchable, it's public record. The
Right.
dogs currently, just to clarify, the dogs are at the county kennel right now, they're not to be released.
No, but there was a dog on Walmart for years I never knew was there, and it attacked my dog and bit it, so.
Do we know if it was raised back to that? Will we get that information, or that's-
We could certainly provide that as a matter of public record to everybody. I don't anticipate that happening.
Since you can't go in, how do you know there aren't more in there?
I don't for a fact know there's not more than that, but I don't have any evidence to show there is on it.
Ma'am, in the Greg?
It's the electronic age. It sounds like the city website is a little bit hard to find out when the meetings are. Could council provide to the people who provide contact information ways that we can electronically let us know when the meetings are to be held, what happened at the meeting, that sort of thing. And another thing goes along the electronic line. If convictions are public records, are reports also public records?
To the extent that they're disposed of in court, they become public records as well. While they're being investigated or pending in court, only certain basic information is public record. Once the case is disposed of and adjudicated, then the entire report becomes public record.
It would be really nice to have a little link on the city website, like saying dogs or something, and you can click on that and you can see what people have reported. My dog has been attacked, you know, I've been chased by this dog at this residence, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we can take that under advisement for consideration of the city's website's improvements. Yep. Mr. Big?
A couple of things. There's been a couple of issues that my wife and I have been interested in, and we've contacted Joan Kemper and asked her to email us the agenda for meetings that had those subjects on it. So she'll do that if you'll contact her. Number two, if you can't go to those meetings, we've just gotten a system that allows us to record public meetings, and those recordings are posted. You can download them from the website. So if you can't make the meeting, you can listen to the recording of the proceedings and see what happens. And you can download it from the website.
In the back.
I don't like the fact that we're not giving a time frame, because I think this really should be a priority. I have 3 kids that are middle school and high school, and they walk our 2 small dogs all the time. And I don't have a degree in law, but it seems to me that this should be made a priority. And, you know, if a child was attacked and God forbid killed, I'm sure it would have been. But we should consider that because the potential is there. So I think that's where my frustration is. You know,
Yeah.
we all go to, most of us work, we do our job. Why can't we speed this up and have emergency meetings? Even if you have to work a little extra hours.
Right.
It's frustrating.
I agree with you. I completely understand what you're saying. This is the process, and I can't guarantee a timeline, but I can assure you that we're going to be putting it on.
Controversial. You're all city council. Can't you tell us when you're gonna put this on the agenda and start talking about it? I mean, we're not asking you to tell us when it's
I'm
going to
going
be.
to actually turn around and we can listen to Mr. Vincent for a second.
So that's the committee we're talking about. We'll do it next week when we get back in. So I'm taking back to talk to the other members. What part?
I expect it to probably be Wednesday, so we have our first council meeting on Tuesday. Probably set something for Wednesday or Thursday, probably 7:30-ish or so. But you'll see that. So Mr. Dave made a good point. If anybody in here emails Joan Kemper and says, I'd like a public notice of the meeting, so you should go on a giant listserv and get these meetings. That's probably the most efficient way to get notice of these things. The website, as was stated earlier, is a little funky. We'll work on that in October.
So just to make sure everybody in the entire room got to hear that, Mr. Vincent mentioned that he intends to hold the first subcommittee meeting on the topic as soon as council reconvenes next week. He suggested perhaps Wednesday at 7:30, but that'll be somebody can find out by going to the city's website or signing up with Joan Kemper, the clerk, of course. Her email address is on the website as well, to receive notifications about the agendas. So that's the initiation of the timeline. Sir?
What places do you publish those posts?
Right, and for those of you who might not have been able to hear Joan, our clerk of council, she mentioned that if you go to the city's website and you go to the city government section, and then you go to the city council section, on the left-hand side, you'll see the agendas. They're listed right there, that's where they are. And you can click on some of them to see the PDFs that contain the actual agendas. Sir?
I've been here an hour after seeing patients all day, and I've heard a lot of rhetoric. Completely aware that there's a legal process that you're confined under the law, the Constitution, whatnot, which we're all glad that we have being in America. But what I haven't heard you say anything, is there a fast-track process legally to get something in place in the interim while you're figuring out your meetings and your agendas and your Roberts rules, et cetera, that will give the people of Bay Village that pay their taxes and dutifully go about their business the comfort and protection without saying we're looking into it? What is available? If there is nothing, then say there's nothing and be done with it. But we keep meandering around the idea. We understand there's a process. I've been here an hour, and I want to know what can be done, and that's it. Not what we will do or what we will consider or what cities we're looking at or what tiers. You know, it's sounding like the terror alerts, you know, red, orange, green. You know, I just want to know, can you up fines immediately, change things to get things where they become more prohibitive in a financial way? Because clearly finances can be an issue for people wanting to go back in this, that you can immediately enact within a month and get things passed through. Can you go through any kind of fast track process without having to rewrite the law and get our legal director here pulling his hair out, et cetera? So is there anything that you can do that will give some sort of, okay, while we're waiting to make a new process, here's what we can do? Because that's what I'm waiting to hear.
Yeah, and Gary, do you have any thoughts on
what can be done right away is, everyone's talked about the repeat offender, right? Everyone's looked at that, heard it, and wants that implemented. That we've already drafted, and will be given to council right away as far as the penalty, the upgrade of that. There are other issues that I think need to be maybe looked at longer, like the offender, the owner of the dog, and how that can best be processed. But as far as the repeat offender, those type of things can be done right away, and immediately present to council for at least pass that, and we'll amend it as we go when we get the complete thing. But those types of situations can be done right away. We've already, our law department's already taken that and always actually drafted on the penalty clause. That can be done.
Will it be?
I said, wait a minute.
It can be, but will it be?
I'm sure it will be, because there's no council, I don't believe any of the council here is gonna sit there and not gonna pass that. I really don't believe that. The penalty clause.
A week and a half from now.
Please.
How about meet tomorrow?
Well,
we have an email. Meet tomorrow. It's already been a week.
That's a special meeting. We want to have
Special meetings for buildings.
We have a lot of meetings. Council of City Bay Village meets more than any community in the west side. They really do. But that being said, the penalty clause can be done right away, while some of these other issues concerning owners and repeat owners can be addressed. That can be put on the agenda as far as the penalty clause and passed. That, because our ordinance doesn't have to be revamped. It's got to be tweaked a little bit as far as two areas. And one's the penalty clause, and that can be addressed right away and submitted to council for approval, and passes the emergency clause.
Ma'am?
think they need to consider that the same person is part of this problem. I think.
They know they don't like it.
Always trying to be the same person, you know, they don't start out doing this time.
Right, right, I think that is the direction that we're focusing on for the escalation concept, and then the concept at this point of something that follows the person rather than the dog. In the red.
You know, I'm not sure how many of you know this, but I have a funny feeling you're all going to be very surprised. There's a family in Bay Village that has offered to rebuild the kennel.
Yes.
And it's been in, the offer is still on the table for 2 years. And the city council refuses to allow this couple to do this, which to me is so indicative of who in the world is in charge. I mean, the kennel, that's fine if some people don't like dogs. This is a freebie for our wealthy community. The fact that there is no dog warden, and actually this gal was really making it quite clear that we would have a lot more leverage with this situation had there been a dog warden. You have to undo that mistake. You have to hire a full-time dog warden for this incredibly comfortable community. In fact, I'm tempted to say I'll pay her salary or his. I don't care. It's hugely important, and it eliminates a level of danger for our children and the people.
Thank you.
What was council's reason for not wanting the kennel?
Such a
Since
good
so many
question.
people are here, since so many people from council are here, it'd be a great opportunity to know.
Tom, you want me to handle
Mr.
that?
Kumar is the president of council, he's got a little more experience on that topic.
Council's job is to appropriate resources and pass ordinances. I think council's always been willing to accept that donation, but the operation and building of the kennel falls to the administration, specifically to the mayor. And at that point, it hasn't
They
gone any
have
farther.
denied that, they have denied that and denied that. They have offered that many times.
Pardon me.
I know the group that is doing this. That has been on the table a lot. So it doesn't have anything to do with the structure. It has to do with the bureaucratic BS that we're all getting here tonight again. And I'm not even in this city, but I've done this job. And don't tell me that you can't go back and get that ordinance that had dangerous and vicious dog. It's not only breed specific. I've written it many times on other breeds. So go back and find that law, because I know it was very similar to Westlake's. It can be done. And yes, council should have gotten together the next night after this happened. What the hell? You wait a year and then you expect people to go, oh, well, there's a timeline. Everybody understands that. These people are here, they're educated people. You know, they know it doesn't happen overnight. But my God, show them something that you're doing instead of just this. This isn't doing it.
Hey, Tom, what would you have done if that was a little kid and not a dog?
There's 2 adults, so they got hurt.
Answer
Look at
that.
a kid or adult.
There were 4 cops. There were 4 cops in that kennel with hands on their guns when that guy brought those 2 pit bulls to the kennel. And then county picked them up. So you tell me that you're gonna be comfortable with what's going on here? Come on.
I don't know how I can be any more clear about the way that I feel about this. I honestly do feel terrible about it, and I want to make sure that we get things done. That's why we're here tonight. That's the point of this meeting tonight, to hear ideas such as yours, such as hers, such as the others around the room, put them on the table, and work through the process. They do take a while. To your question, sir, they do take a while to get through the process, as I'm sure you all understand. We can stagger them, but that's how the process works.
The gentleman mentioned passing it on to the mayor. So the mayor's leaving.
Right.
Today. Oh, and then we're gonna have an interim. So then you know where that's gonna go, it'll just sit on somebody's desk. That's what I tell you.
We really can't hear what's going on in here.
Mr. Mays.
You want to step outside?
Here I wanted to ask one question of you. Is the irresponsible behavior of an owner of a dog, is there anything the city can do through the court system where you might get an order of restraint on him for anything, or anything like that.
If it's a repeat offender, you can put in there that the court has latitude. You can put probation, you could put reading of obey in school, things of this nature. It's an equity, more of an equity issue. The court, we rely on the court based on a repeat offender. We need concerns, so restraints the court can put on. That's what we're trying to get to. So the owner would have restraints like you can't bring the dog back until he goes to obedience school or any type of those restrictions. Restrictions based on the fact insurance is shown, restrictions as far as the fences, security, things of that nature. The court has the ability to do something like that in repeat offender. That's what we're looking to do in this circumstance.
Okay, but if we can take that forward, we can get something prior to going through the legislative process.
Well, I think we can put something together at least to stop gap, but I think there needs to be a total revamp on some of the issues, but not all.
Could I have a question? Why is he not required to have homeowners insurance then? But there's a possibility he's not showing that.
I don't know he doesn't have it. I'm assuming he does. I really don't know. I bet he does.
Is there any way that you can check?
Well, that's why I said
I'm
we may
99%
have a civil action that would be picked up by the insurance company for damages.
All right, but then an attorney to end up hiring an attorney, you have to pay a fee for that, for him to go in and find out whether or not this man has homeowners insurance. Why can't the city check to find out? Wait, he's got an answer.
I have an answer. He doesn't have to tell me that. I mean, I don't have, just like the company
He can bring the rest of the dog back into his house and kill somebody and not have homeowners.
You have an answer over here.
I have an answer. I have a lawyer. He has been sued. He keeps claiming that he has no money. The lawyer has had to wait for a small window where he could get the lawsuit to him because he failed to follow directions that he was given by the court. We finally, after a whole year, have gotten on the docket of a judge downtown, because after a certain amount of money and damages that a person has done, the lawsuit then goes downtown. He keeps saying he doesn't have any money.
Does he have insurance?
He keeps saying he does not. My lawyer has had one hell of a job trying to get any information out of him, and he has done a lot of work, and I know he's talked to some of you, and I don't mean this as an insult, but he said a lot of those people haven't been very nice to me as far as giving me information about what has happened, over in Bay Village. Well, that's easy to say.
No, it's not easy to say. If you got specifics, I'll be happy to try to address it, but I'm not aware of any attorney who's called me about specific on a case pending on town police court.
Sir?
I have a specific one. My wife was attacked and severely injured about 3 months ago on Marvis, and had several $1,000s in medical expenses and missed work for quite a while, and now has quite a fear about walking the dog in the neighborhood. Even with witnesses, neighbors that witnesses to this attack, I couldn't get the police to even write a citation against this attack, okay? So I've been out with my little dog several times in the last year to walk the neighborhood. Dogs come out, they're not leashed up, they charge. Last week, a pit bull at 443 Hearst, unleashed, charged my wife. She picked the dog up, runs into the street where she could have been killed by a car, and it's still going on. This woman's waiting 1 year, her dog's mauled. And you say about many times we've been to this address and the system has failed. Many people have looked into this and the system fails us again. So, Councilman, you did give us good advice. People, you gotta stay motivated, because 2 months from now, some other incident will come. It won't be a dog incident, but it'll be something else, and we'll forget about this, and nothing will happen, just like nothing happened for this woman the year before, and the year before, and the year before. If we don't stay motivated, if we don't go to this meeting in November, if somebody doesn't go to council, another attack will happen like my wife's next year. I say to this woman, I have a lawyer, the people won't cooperate. It's a very frustrating situation. So people, the councilman gave good advice. You have to stay motivated. You have to really stay motivated and keep on.
Yes.
I would like to say that there are ways that we can change laws. I mean, you just have to write a law, petition, and, I mean, it can get done with us. I mean, I don't know if anyone's aware of that, but we can do it ourselves. I've done it.
Just us?
Yes. The community.
Yes, sir.
I've done it too.
Councilman.
That's absolutely true.
And to all the other council members that are here, do you live on Pellet Drive?
No.
Do you live next to these people?
I live on Bradley Road.
Do you live in the vicinity of them?
I do. They're my neighbors.
Okay. Have you had, like, the opportunity to go over and say hi? Bring your little dog, introduce him. I'm telling you, it is incredibly frustrating to me, as someone who pays my taxes, as someone who pays my mortgage, as someone who's respectful to my neighbors, as someone who is respectful to my community.
Right.
All right, to have an individual with a record of violations and incarcerations or arrests as long as my arm or longer, that has absolutely no punitive actions against this individual who has no regard for us in this community. It is plain and simple. This guy doesn't want to play ball with the rest of us. And we have neighbors and everything that live directly around that house in question that have seen things repeatedly. So I just want to know, are you going to go on over and say hello?
We're going to be working together as a community. Whatever it takes to make that happen is what I'll be doing. But fundamentally, it's going to be a partnership between the police department, who's going to enforce the laws that we have, and the laws that we create, and the legislative branch that work to create the new laws. That's part of what this meeting really is tonight. This is a chance to meet you, meet everyone else in the neighborhood, and find out how we can get this to move forward. That's why we're collecting ideas, and specific ideas, if anyone has them, about what to do to move forward.
I'd like to say I want a criminal investigation against this guy.
Okay.
That whole household. What's that take?
I can address that. Obviously, that's my bailiwick, and if I'm going to do a criminal investigation, I got to know what I'm investigating. So if you want to talk afterwards, I'd be happy to do that. Just be aware, we're familiar with the residents, we're familiar with the people that occupy that residence, and if I'm going to do an investigation, I got to know what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Just an input.
Yeah.
I'm trying to catch up on this case, but under the state ordinances, 95528B, the owner would be liable for damages. And you might look at that 95528, it says dogs may be killed for certain acts, owners liable for damages. But this is where you may start with your dangerous and vicious thing. Now this is under state, so you have to write it under state.
Yep.
But it starts out with the dog that is chasing or approaching in a menacing fashion or apparent attitude of attack that attempts to bite or otherwise endanger or that kills or injures a person or a dog that chases, threatens, harasses, injures, or kills livestock. That has been around for a long time, but you have to go to the state to write it. So I know there's a lot of them. I know it's confusing. Like I said, it is something that I used to do. I knew it was there, and I'm sorry I didn't find it earlier.
That's okay. Hey, please feel free to stay involved as we work through the process of drafting legislation, but that's good advice.
I mean, I work in the city around here too, and I'm an animal person that lets people's dogs out in rooms, and so these are things that I want to make sure that my charges are safe too, as well as me. So.
Yep. Sir?
I would encourage the people in the room to take a look at the Avon Lake city ordinances. I talked to Mr. Henderson last week and suggested that we take a look at some of the neighboring city ordinances and see what are the differences between what are on the books here in Bay Village and what's going on in nearby communities. State ordinances aren't very good, Westlake's ordinances aren't very good, there's a few others that are not very good, but the city of Westlake revamped their entire ordinance system last year.
You mean Avon Lake?
I'm sorry?
Avon Lake.
Avon Lake.
Right.
I said Westlake. The Avon Lake, it's pretty robust. I'm not suggesting that we do everything that Avon Lake did, but there was a comment back here, what do we do when there's a dog running at large? You know, how do I know if a dog runs up to me? Is that a vicious dog or not? And that's addressed in the Avon Lake ordinance. So when we start thinking about ideas and start thinking about how we're going to suggest to council what changes we'd like to see, use the Avon Lake ordinance as a template. Because there is quite a bit there. It is pretty robust. Some of the things that the police chief mentioned before about probationary items, there are some offenses listed there that are misdemeanor ones. Misdemeanor ones are the highest misdemeanor before you get to felony. They do have probation with them, and those would be the type of things that you know, certainly the city prosecutors could take a look to the court and petition for that owner not to have dogs in the future if they're on probation. So do take a quick look at that Avon Lake ordinance. Just Google Avon Lake City Ordinance and go to the 600 series and you'll find the dangerous animal ordinances there. I think they're a very good template for us to start taking a look at.
I concur with that recommendation. That is the one that we've been looking at most heavily because it's got a lot of extra content that ours does not. So I think that's a great place for us to look to for inspiration. Ma'am?
It sounds to me as if, you know, a lot of the things that that are on that ordinance are not necessarily going to be giving any relief or comfort to the people that are involved in this. And it almost needs to be that it's upside down in what we're looking at. We need to look at the most severe first and then trickle down to the other because, I mean, these people have been waiting a long time.
I think I understand what you're saying. I mean,
So we need to look at the most severe offenses.
Right.
First, not the minor ones, but we need to look at the most severe in this safety committee meeting.
Okay. So we'll take that as your advice. Thank you. Yes. Ma'am.
And most definitely, I do want to voice my concern about the responsibility of the pet owner. We have a leash ordinance in this park, and I'm sure this won't be a really popular thing among some of you, because I encounter some of you when I'm walking my dog on a leash in the park. I encounter some of you when I am in my backyard, which backs up to the park, and your dogs run into my yard. And some of you say, hey, my dog's friendly. You've no idea what the interaction between your friendly unleashed dog and my leashed dog is going to be. Or the rescued dog that I might be walking that I have no idea of the past of that dog. So some of us around here encounter loose dogs quite often, and we've got kids, we've got dogs, and we all need to be responsible because it isn't just the attack on Pellet, it's the attacks on Marvis and in other parts of the community. And we need to prevent it from happening anywhere within the community. And in my mind, it really starts with being responsible and holding the pet owners responsible.
I share that opinion completely. I often walk around in the park right over here, and I often see people walking their dogs without a leash on. And that is against the law. And perhaps what all of us could do is work together to remind our fellow neighbors when we see them of the law. We can report them to the police as we see them, and the police department can do a good job of enforcing the law whenever they have the opportunity to do so, and make sure that when complaints are registered, that they're followed up on and fines to the highest extent possible are levied. So I agree with all of that sentiment. Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question for the chief about that, because I have talked to other officers about dogs running in the park. And I know that the standard has been that an officer has to see it happen.
Right.
So if I have my cell phone and I snap a picture of a dog running through the park and it's off leash, that doesn't do it?
What we'd have to do is make a report, submit that to the prosecutor is going to make a ruling on whether there's probable cause to cite, and if he rules there is, we would do that.
Because I'm thinking Nicole could do that too, when there's a dog running into your yard. Just take a picture of it.
Yeah, and I would encourage that because, or any dog running anywhere, whether you know the owner or not, if you see a dog running loose, the idea is to get a picture of that dog if possible. If not that, then at least a description, and kind of give us an idea where that dog went, so that we can follow back on that and try to determine where it is. One advantage I will tell you of having an ACO is our former ACO knew where every dog lived like I know where all the bad guys live, right? So one of the advantages of an ACO is they begin to know the dog owners, they begin to know the people in the city that have the dogs, and when a dog is missing or a dog does an action, she kind of knows where she knew where to go. So that is one advantage of having an animal control officer. But since we don't have that, I would follow up with what you're saying is take a photo, try to determine where the dog is going, let us know. We'll do a follow-up and try to determine who the owner is.
Don't we pay dog owners?
We do. Well, that goes to, I believe that goes to the county.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm here because I live on Cullen and I've been directly involved in two instances. And I'm afraid for my children to walk on the street. I am now even more horrified at the fact of hearing these other reports of other instances where people were attacked in other places in the city, and that this has been going on for a long time. I know for a fact you were aware of the attack that happened a year ago.
Yep.
Council was aware of the fact that this happened a year ago. It was addressed by me via email to council, to the police. I was responded to. I know in the minutes that you addressed it and said that ordinances need to be changed. You seem to be very sympathetic and aware, but a year has gone by and nothing has happened. What takeaway do we have to say, okay, another year's going to go by? Your sympathy?
No, I think just as you and others have said, that's the function of the democratic process here in America, right? So I'm your elected representative. It's my job to represent you at City Council. That's what I'm going to be doing. And that's why we're having this meeting tonight. If you don't feel I'm doing a good job of it, you should call me, email me, and not vote for me. That's the way it works.
So the emails and the correspondence that's happened until now don't count. It's going forward that we can only hold them accountable for.
They've laid the groundwork. That's given us direction and history. And like I said before, this event is new now. We have a specific event that we can look to, a specific event that wasn't contemplated by the prior laws. Because remember, the existing laws that were in place in 2015 caused the removal of the dog. The dog that attacked in 2015 is not there anymore. So those laws had their intended effect. The dog was out of the house. Now we're dealing with a new situation that was not contemplated before. A repeat offender. Yes, that's the new layer of detail. We have a new situation now where we know that we've had a situation where the same exact house has been involved in two similar situations. This gives us a new realm of consideration. That's what I can tell you about that.
So it's only because it's reoccurring. It's not. I mean, we need to hold accountable anybody who has a dog that is attacked or a person that is attacked by a dog, not just these people. I mean, yes, they do bad things. Bad things happen because of this household, but it's happening elsewhere too.
Well, we're never going to be able to completely prevent dog attacks. That's just not something we can do. What we can try to do is reduce the probability of a similar situation to this occurring in the future, and that's what we're going to be working on. Sir?
After what period of time should we expect councilmen or women's resignations if no more action is taken?
I can't really answer that question, sir.
Why don't you volunteer? Tell us how long it should take. How long should some kind of regulation, good or bad, I don't know, but how long should some regulation take before you say, you know, I failed my constituents?
Well, all I can tell you is that's what we're going to be working on, and I think we're going to be meeting next week to begin it. That's where this is at.
I didn't hear my question answered. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Probably if it happens to a councilman,
Sir?
family member, or pet.
The gentleman has mentioned Avon Lake a couple of times. Well,
Yep.
I'm good friends with the prosecutors there, and I think he told me last week that at the current time they have like 6 dog attack claims going on at the present time. And so necessarily writing tough rules and tough laws is not going to prevent dogs from fighting, dogs from biting other dogs.
Right.
We all grew up, I grew up in this town. There's been loose dogs here for 60 years. It's going to continue to be loose dogs. There's no doubt about that. People bring dogs in, people move out, people get new dogs. You walk by the house, dogs run out. You got to be, I've said, my dog's been attacked 3 times, my wife's been injured. I'm prepared now, I'm just gonna say, I go out, I walk my dog, I know where I'm going, I am now prepared for something to happen. And I really just tell people, if you really think something's gonna happen and all kinds of tough laws are gonna be wrote, then you're still not gonna be in danger, you're mistaken. The police aren't gonna be all around, and if they don't see it, they won't, nothing will happen, they gotta see it, so. You can write the toughest laws, you want to throw people in jail. It won't change the fact that you go out and take your dog for a walk, you can still get attacked at any time.
I share that exact same comment with you. Like I said, we will try to write the laws that try to prevent or limit the probability of this happening again. But like I said before, we cannot make this not happen through law. There's no way to do that. Yes, ma'am.
In that vein, I walk my dog every day on the streets that they're mentioning. Do anyone have an idea of what would be best for me to carry with me if a dog met? Well, I don't have something that would be good. A bat? The mailman gave it back off.
I got it. I talked to a Metro Parks ranger because of a loose dog in the park. I said I had 3 kids with me. I was scared out of my mind. I put the kids behind me against a tree, and I stood in front of the kids and just went like this, and she said, make yourself large. Make yourself large, and it will intimidate the dog.
Are there any other comments or questions pertaining to the ordinances? Yes, ma'am.
This might sound really simplistic, but if you've ever seen the property, if you've driven by it, they do not have a fence. Can they be forced to build a fence so that even if the dogs get out of their house, they won't attack them? Can they be forced to build a fence?
They still have a broken front door. They run out front. They don't run out.
Right, and what Ms. Moran was saying is they still have a broken front door. There's nothing in the law that requires
Around
somebody.
the entire property.
There's nothing in the law currently, unless it's deemed a vicious dog or dangerous dog, that can require us to have them have a fence. Again, a lot of this, and I don't mean to interrupt Mr. Henderson, a lot of this goes back, and you've all mentioned it, responsibility to the individual dog owners. We can only do so much. The individual dog owners have to be responsible. When they're not, we hold them accountable. That's really the bottom line, and it doesn't always work. That's just the reality. Is there anything else? Because I know we're running a little long and people are starting to filter out. Speaking for Mr. Henderson and Mr. Ebert, we thank you for coming. We're certainly going to keep this working. Like I told you, you need to hold us accountable. Okay? You need to do that. And likewise, we're hoping for your input and your support in anything that we move forward on. Okay? Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.